I was standing under the shower when the water suddenly slowed to a humiliating trickle. And in that exact moment, as steam filled the bathroom and irritation crawled up my spine, I heard the neighbor's water pump kick on next door, and that's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. Someone was stealing from me, and they'd told Chanti. Been doing it for years. Intro CTA. So if you've ever felt that quiet rage when someone takes what's yours and assumes you're too weak, too polite, or too unaware to stop them, hit like, subscribe, and settle in. Because this is one of those rare stories where justice doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. Full story, I live in Asia, in the heart of a crowded capital city where land is gold and privacy is a myth. And I had just bought a house that everyone else had already mentally written off as abandoned. A half-renovated place owned by family friends who'd fled the country 3 years earlier, desperate for cash, leaving behind bare walls, exposed pipes, and a front entrance so neglected it didn't even have a real lock, just a rusty padlock hanging there like a joke. And because they trusted me because I'd known them my whole life, they gave me a deal so good it felt like I was stealing, which is ironic, considering what happened next. The very first day I moved in, before I'd even finished unloading boxes, I found a stranger's motorcycle parked comfortably inside my garage like it belonged there, and something in my gut tightened. That quiet warning bell that tells you this neighborhood doesn't respect boundaries. So I calmly wheeled it out onto the street, installed a proper gate the same day, and later that evening an angry man showed up pounding on my new gate like he owned the place, shouting, demanding, but I didn't answer. I just watched him through the window as he fumed for 15 minutes before grabbing his bike and storming off. And from that moment on, I knew this wasn't going to be a friendly place. But still, nothing major happened after that. Just small annoyances like people blocking my gate because they still thought the house was empty. Problems I solved with a simple "no parking" sign until last week, standing naked and vulnerable under that shower when the water pressure dropped so suddenly it felt like the house itself was gasping. And then I heard it, the mechanical hum of my next-door neighbor's pump. And context matters here, because this neighbor was an old man, bitter, territorial, living on the lowest floor of a 3-story house with 2 rented units above him, a man who had been furious when he found out the house next to his was being sold, who'd complained endlessly to the previous owners, who'd clearly grown comfortable treating my property like an extension of his own while it sat abandoned. And as the water barely dribbled from the showerhead, my thoughts sharpened. My jaw clenched, and I ran a simple test. I waited for his pump to shut off, turned my taps again, and just like magic, the pressure returned strong and steady, and suddenly all those old high-water bills the previous owners had shrugged off as leaks clicked into place like puzzle pieces snapping together. And I realized this man hadn't just crossed a line once, he'd built a lifestyle on it, quietly siphoning water from a house he thought no one would ever reclaim. And I sat with that knowledge for days, weighing my options. Knowing the water itself was cheap, that even with him stealing, my bill barely hit $5 a month. But this was never about money. It was about entitlement, about someone deciding that because you weren't there, because you were quiet, because you hadn't noticed, they deserved what was yours. And that kind of disrespect eats at you, gnaws at your chest, and eventually demands an answer. So instead of confronting him, instead of risking drama or legal nonsense, I chose something far cleaner, far more devastating. I turned off my main water supply. Nothing illegal, nothing aggressive, just a simple flick of a valve. And on Monday night, when I heard his pump kick on again, blindly hungry for water that was no longer there, I shut it off completely, knowing how these systems work, knowing that the ball valve in his rooftop tank would stay open, screaming silently for water that would never come, forcing the pump to run endlessly, dry, overheating, straining against decades, old wiring that had never been upgraded. And I went to sleep with a calm I hadn't felt since moving in. And at around 3 a.m., I woke to chaos, voices, footsteps, arguments echoing through the night as his entire house lost power and water, tenants shouting, panic setting in, because where I live, cutting off utilities isn't just inconvenient, it's illegal, a landlord's responsibility. And by sunrise, the damage was clear: fried wiring, a dead pump, angry tenants. Police complaints filed before breakfast, stent fines issued without mercy. one tenant packing up and leaving within 2 days, both demanding their deposits back. And suddenly, this man who thought he was clever enough to steal unnoticed was staring down a financial collapse. A $500 fine he couldn't afford. Repair costs he couldn't ignore. And an empty building he was legally barred from renting out until everything was fixed. And the most satisfying moment of all came when he knocked on my gate, voice subdued, eyes searching my face as he asked if I'd turned off my water, and I smiled politely and said I'd had a leak. Nothing more, nothing less. Watching his expression tighten as understanding dawned without a single accusation. Spoken, and days later, I learned he's moving in with his daughter, broke, defeated, undone not by violence or threats, but by his own greed and my patience. And next week, my plumber will remove every last pipe that dares cross my boundary, leaving me with clean water, peace of mind, and a neighborhood that finally understands this house is no longer abandoned. Climax. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's quiet, surgical, and devastatingly fair. Reflection. Karma doesn't always strike like lightning. Sometimes it hums softly through old wires until everything burns out. Outro CTA. And if this story made you feel that deep, satisfying sense of justice, smash that like button. Tell us in the comments what you would have done differently. And subscribe for more revenge stories where the punishment fits the crime perfectly.